Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee to order. Tamar, can we have a roll call, please?
Vice Chair Borrego. Member Ackerman. Member Green Wilson.
Present.
Member Kennedy. Member Schutte.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the RACC, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Is there any public comment? Denny or Mr. French?
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. My question is, I didn't see in the packet, 4A, is the term deal going to be discussed for the,
I'm sorry, 4A is election of
4A?
chair and vice
I'm sorry.
chair, and I did not write a memo on that.
okay, thank you.
All right. Item 3, for possible action, approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes? Are there any corrections? No? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor to approve? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, it is approved unanimously. Our next item, item 4A, for possible action, discussion and possible action to elect a chair and a vice chair for calendar year 2024. Hope, take it away.
Per your bylaws, you should have done this last meeting, so I apologize. I overlooked it, and so we scheduled it for tonight. I'll leave it to you.
Excellent. Well, first of all, we are a new but wonderful crew, and so I would love to nominate Ashley Ackerman to be the chair of our Redevelopment Citizens Committee, if Ashley is willing to take on that role. Awesome. Is there a second?
Second.
And a third. All right. So it's sounding like we're ready for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Ashley, you are our new chair. Yay. And then for vice chair, I would like to, and of course, if other folks have recommendations as well, I would love to recommend Lee Kennedy as vice chair. Lee, is that something you would be willing to do? Awesome. Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Sounds like we now have a new chair and a new vice chair. And Ms. Chair, would you like to take over, kind of practice? We're a user-friendly crowd. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I'll try to do you right. Do we move on to the next section now? Okay. So 4B's agenda title for possible action, discussion, and possible discretionary funds, tentative. Oh, and possible action regarding.
Those are the notes from the last one.
Oh.
There you go. Nope, that's right.
Okay. 4B, for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding direction concerning the Carson City Redevelopment Facade Improvement Program for redevelopment project areas 1 and 2, and a possible recommendation to the Redevelopment Authority concerning the facade improvement program.
Thank you. So at your last meeting, you reviewed the budget for fiscal year 25. And as part of that budget discussion, what RACC talked about was sort of minimizing the number of projects that you were recommending be funded. And the idea was that the money that was not allocated would stay in an unallocated line item so that the board could utilize, or I should say the redevelopment authority could utilize it on space needs in the city. So as we discussed, we're in the high, well, Scott could speak to this actually, but I'll stay on it. When the city hits 60,000 people, we need another courtroom. And so in district court, so the city has that space need, plus just as the city has grown, we're kind of outgrowing our space. And so with that in mind, coupled with the redevelopment authority's stated objective of not funding individual businesses, not funding things that will support a single entity, but looking to support infrastructure that would support, a lot of people are supporting events that they can't have a ticket for, like the 4th of July. You can't have a ticket for the 4th of July. You can stand anywhere and see the fireworks. So they focused on that type of funding. So to contrast that with how redevelopment used to work, you may have heard, or I won't say that, I'll say this. Today, I had to locate a file on a redevelopment grant that was provided to Burlington Coat Factory. And they had a 10-year payback period. The agreement was executed in 2008, so their payback period ended in 2018. But that was an example where the city was entering into agreements or contracts, if you will, with the individual businesses and providing money to those businesses. So that way of doing business is not how we've been doing business. That said, we do have the facade grant program. So the facade grant program has not been a really robust program, to be honest with you. It used to be, RACC would meet because we had a request for a facade grant, and we just really haven't had many requests. The facade grant is capped at $25,000, and I provided you with that program. It also requires a 50% match. So I thought we were going to have someone here today, which we don't, but he's interested in the facade grant, but for something more than $25,000. Now, because his request would be inconsistent with the facade grant program, you couldn't entertain his request today. So this item's really an opportunity for you all to talk among yourselves about the facade grant program specifically. Right now, you have not recommended funding that program for fiscal year 25. So you can have a conversation about whether or not you should rethink funding the facade grant program and whether or not the restrictions on the facade grant program, including the maximum funding of $25,000 and including the 50% match, are, and anything else you read in it, whether or not those make sense, or if you would recommend a modification to the facade grant program to the redevelopment authority. So that's what's before you today, is just sort of a discussion on the facade grant and the program itself, and whether or not you're recommending funding of it and whether or not you're recommending any modifications to the program. And I will answer any questions you have. Otherwise, it's your discussion.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to talk about regarding this facade program?
So, on the last time we have 2025 to 2029, it was allocated $50,000 per year. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if it was entirely 50 or if it was 25, and then there was a carryover of 25,000 from the year before. It's the board's been funding it at 25,000. And the most recent request we got was for Dave Shriver's building over Kaleidoscope.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the rear of the building facing Curry Street.
Right.
And so we did get that, and he's almost done with that project, but we really haven't had a whole lot.
And the reason for moving away from this program is because nobody's taking advantage of it?
It's two things. One, nobody is taking advantage, and part of that could be the $25,000 price tag. It's a fairly low price tag. That said, I spoke to a different business owner, this was a few years ago, had a meeting with him. He was going to do some improvements, and I was fairly confident he'd apply, and he never applied.
Hmm.
It's like, which was interesting because he did the project, but never asked for the facade grant. And so I'm not really sure if the $25,000 price tag is just not a strong incentive, because that's somebody who knew all about it and didn't do the project. The other thing is it is inconsistent with the board's philosophy, with that philosophy being, let's focus on infrastructure or events that will bring people to the redevelopment areas where they can't charge a ticket. And this really is something that every year when the board looks at the redevelopment authority and the board of supervisors looks at the budget, there's discussion about the facade grant. And in fact, right now, what the city's policy is, based on direction from the board, is if there's unused money in the facade grant line item, it's to be rolled over to sidewalks, not rolled over to the facade grant.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, John has just arrived, and so if you'd like to hear what he's thinking about for his business, which is in the redevelopment area, he can outline that for you if you'd like.
Okay. Would you guys like to hear from him?
Yes, please. Thanks.
Okay, come on up.
Just state your name.
Hi, my name's John Napoleon. I'm one of the owners of Carson City Hyundai, and I apologize for being late.
Do you want to tell them what you're thinking about doing over at the
So at the, while I remodeled back in 2020, it's not good enough for Hyundai standards. So they're making me remodel again, and I'm asking, basically, we may have to make the building a little bigger to accommodate what they think is the proper square footage for this franchise. And it's very costly, and I've done reports for the city and showed all the taxes that we generate and whatnot, and that I basically was asking for the facade to, a lot of it has to do with the facade they want me to have, for some assistance, so I can keep my franchise here in the city. I like Carson City a lot, and just seeing if there's any help that they can assist me with. It's probably, I mean, it's a big undertaking, and we're just a family-owned business, and we've drawn our roots here in Carson City with a lot of gratitude to the local community.
And Madam Chair, if I can just bring Mr. Napoleon up to date. So this is the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee. And so right now, the facade grant's limited at $25,000. And so what they're doing is having a conversation about whether or not they believe the facade grant program should be funded and whether or not there should be modifications to that program, which your request would require a modification.
Yes.
Because your request is outside the parameters of the facade grant, they can't approve your request today. But what they can do is ask you questions, understand your request within the framework of them looking at the facade grant program.
Okay.
Do you guys have any questions for John? Go ahead.
$3 million is the project cost,
That's the estimated cost as of today.
and that is like a physical expansion.
Yes, so it is an expansion of the sales showroom, the service drive, and the bays for the technicians who work in. As you know, whether, I'm not here to tell you if electric vehicles are gonna make it or not, but there are requirements I have as a dealer to accommodate the future of electric vehicles. So I would be adding 5 service stalls, which I would be adding technicians to, which are good paying jobs that we bring into the area to modernize. And so they have a whole program, Hyundai has a whole program, and it's that bronze look I currently have on the store, but it's expanded. And so, you know, that whatever help I could have is just, it's helpful. As we all know, interest rates have gone up, and I don't know whether they come down or not. I mean, they don't, Hyundai doesn't really care if they go up or down. They're putting pressure on me by withholding my, you know, my agreement till I agree to do something. So I'm asking for help, so.
And this has changed recently? You've been
Well,
operating as a business for how long?
I've been operating at that location since 2018, and when I signed up in 2018, I had to make the current, what I currently have now was the agreement at that point in time. As soon as I was 80% done, they changed the rules on me. And then if you remember, that was the beginning of 2020, we entered into COVID, couldn't get any answers of variances. So I had to complete the job because my sales staff was in a cargo container, which probably didn't meet all the COVID standards. I hope I'm outside of the statute of limitations on that. Okay, so, we had to finish up the building the best we can. I got my occupancy permit in September of 2020, was able to get in. Shortly after that, Hyundai finally graced me with their presence to have a meeting, and they said, well, this doesn't meet the current standards. So, you know, so we've been kind of pushing it off because I just did this in 2020, and we're not even to September of 24 yet. So they've been pushing hard and pushing many dealers across the country, not just myself, but I happen to be here. And I like the area. I think it's a great product, and, you know, we should be able to add good paying jobs with this too. You know, the technicians are making $25 to $45 an hour currently. And that's at today's rate, might be more in 2 years, but so they're good paying jobs that I would be able to bring also to the party.
It sounds like they're not supporting you very much as a franchisee.
Well, this is unfortunately
like
common
they're-
with many brands.
This is what we want, and you better do it. kinda.
That's, yeah, is what happens in any franchise when it becomes more successful, which Hyundai has become very successful in the last few years, they put more requirements on the franchisee, right? You can go to In-N-Out Burger, you can go to Chick-fil-A, it's their way or the highway, right? They're not given many variances. And so I have to redo the whole frontage of the building, which I just did. And the problem is there's only one supplier of the building material I need, and that's Hyundai. You know, I can't source it to the competitive bid. This is it, and this is the cost. And so just that alone will be about 400 grand of the project, just the new ACM panels.
So our little pittance of a facade.
Well, but if you think about it, that's a lot of money for a $3 million renovation. Just the ACM panels, that's a lot of money.
I meant that our maximum is
Oh,
$25,000.
right. And here
At least at this point.
Correct, and I had asked for a little bit more. You know, I'm just trying to make it all work.
I think that's where my question is how did you, knowing that we're limited at $25,000, how'd you come up with 90,000? How do you quantify that?
Well, I was told that, you know, what I asked for originally, or what I was in discussion, was, you know, to help me with maybe half of the ACM It's all facade, and they said that that would never get approved.
Mhm.
So I, I dreamt, I don't have a
just threw
math
it, yeah?
equation, but I went for something that I thought was possible.
Okay.
And now I could be completely wrong, and it's no disrespect to anybody.
I think there was another piece of it. John had a conversation with the Chamber of Commerce,
Mhm.
and Rodney Hanneman's familiar with the facade grant program. And so she redirected him to the city. In talking with John about dollars, if he hit 100,000, he would have to pay prevailing wage.
That's right. Yeah,
And so he checked with his team to see if paying prevailing wage, what that would do to the overall price tag. And based on that information from his team, decided to come in at under 100,000.
Thank you.
And so that was, I think, where the 90,000 came from. So I don't want you to think there were huge negotiations or anything like
Right.
that. There weren't. And again, this is simply an illustration. Right now, the facade grant is capped at 25,000, but this is an illustration of how it could be used in a business that's in the redevelopment area that is interested.
Thank
Right.
you.
And some of my, and I've only been here since 18, but I know some of my colleagues in the area, we're got some real good tax grants, which is fine. It's good for them. But that's why I decided to ask.
Comment. What's difficult about this is that it's almost really out of the purview of the redevelopment authority in terms of really what the facade grant was initially. The fact that, because I drove by the business today, and I drive by it all the time, but I looked more closely today, and you actually did a lovely job.
Thank you.
And I was then wondering, well, why do we need a new facade? Because this is really quite nice. And now it makes more sense to me, the additional request. The additional request, however, isn't part of really the spirit of the facade grant initially. The dilemma that you speak to in terms of other businesses and tax breaks and all, I don't think this can not solve that, but I think it's just two different items. So so this one is a really tough one. I don't see it as going above 25,000, even if it were, and that, I'm just one voice. But in light of the other needs that Carson City is facing now in terms of space needs, in terms of infrastructure and the sidewalk, and the Board of Supervisors had really spoken to applying any monies we can to, the sidewalks and that kind of infrastructure. So there lies the dilemma.
I could respect that.
Yeah.
So, like Hope said, this isn't something we're going to be able to rule on today and tell you definitely yes, definitely no, and an amount. Just for our knowledge, when is Hyundai requiring you complete this project?
Well, they would like it started like yesterday,
Yesterday.
to be honest with you. I mean, I'm trying to go as slow as them possible, trying to get everything to match up. So, they would want me to start immediately. Now, I have gone through and I've done the initial, I guess, informal permitting where you go in with your architect and your GC and what is it? Major project review. We did that already, so everybody's on board. I probably have enough right now to go in for permitting. But I'm I haven't done that yet. But I'm close and could go in at any time.
My hope is, first of all, we appreciate you and we're glad you're in Carson City. So please know that.
Thank you.
And we appreciate what you're bringing to Carson City and the jobs and all of that. My hope is Hyundai, do they work with their,
There's no money really from them that they'll give me. If I would, if I could have, whatever, if I started the project in 2020, after I had just redid it, there was monies that were available through the end of last year, or maybe it's the end of this year, but you have to be completed, and there's really no way.
so you're falling into the infamous unfunded mandate, if you will.
Correct,
Oh, dear.
correct, right.
Madam Chair, I think this is an interesting conversation, but we have to make sure this was an illustration and the discussion should be about the facade grant and whether or not you're recommending funding or modifications to it.
We thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you all for your
Thank
time. I
you.
appreciate it, and I appreciate the work that you all do. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yes. We will hear for public comment now.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I took opportunity earlier today to read over your authorities and your responsibilities and your ethics and all. And I wasn't really looking specifically at this facade part of it. I was caught up in the fact that you did loans. How many different types of loans I'll be looking into or considerations? At this point, it's a facade deal, and I was thinking of that more in the historical venue, that it would be used to restore a building that had been changed from its time period to another, or having damage done to the present building and bringing it back to its original form. And so this is all new to me, and I appreciate the practice, and congratulations and welcome. But I am looking at the idea that this to me really seems like a really important opportunity to decide how far is this are you as a commission to be able to decide what you're going to find money for. You only have 25,000 and you have that per person, it seemed like, but that then the person would pay the 50% on the deal. It was a half and half, correct? My understanding is, though, that there are loans, and so I didn't get to ask Hope about what those loans would be or such. And so if she could help me on that, I'd appreciate it.
Madam Chair, are you okay with that? Okay. So as we talked about earlier in the meeting, the redevelopment authority or the redevelopment program in Carson City has evolved, and the priorities have evolved. And maybe evolved isn't necessarily the word. They changed. They're different. And so it used to be there was a loan program, but then it turned into a grant program. And the one I looked up earlier today had a 10-year payback period. And after that 10 years, it was forgiven. So the business accepted money from the city, it operated for 10 years, and then after that 10 years, it didn't owe money back. We had one go to the Board of Supervisors about 6 months ago, was the Texaco that turned into a Shell station in downtown Carson City. And he was selling his property and he wanted a notice of release because he had received a loan from the Redevelopment Authority, again, was in business for a long enough period of time. That loan was forgiven. And so the city used to operate that way. It also used to have a bigger staff, to be honest, to manage redevelopment. The city now has been very clear, and when I became director in 2021, I asked the Redevelopment Authority to verify on the record that the priority was infrastructure, because I was reading that in the reports, but I wanted to hear them say it. And they said, absolutely, our priority is infrastructure. We do not want to use the redevelopment money on an individual business. We want to spend it on infrastructure that will benefit a lot of people as opposed to a single entity. And so in response to the public comment, the priorities of redevelopment just changed.
Thank you, Hope.
Could I ask, since you went through all of the rules again, what I understood was that it was a reimbursement as opposed to a loan. All of the bills for the facade improvements were done on a basis of half and half, and that bills had to be presented before the funds came across, as opposed to like, here's your 25,000 type.
There's been different permutations. So, and it looks like, at least in my packet, the resolution which should be attached to the report is not attached. Did anybody get the resolution attached by any chance? Yeah, oh, you have it attached? Good, because mine's missing. Okay, at least it's just me and not you. Okay, so basically, I referenced earlier today, I looked at the agreement with Burlington Coat Factory. That was structured, here's X number of dollars, here's the payback schedule. After 10 years, you don't owe us any money back. So then we had a situation where somebody closed within a year. That was Paradise something. It was a restaurant at the mall. And he is still paying back because he closed within the 10-year time frame. So it was, I think, historically, in large part, a grant program, because you stayed in business 10 years, you didn't owe any money back. The payback schedule had stopped. I think what you're referencing is the facade grant, and you're exactly right on the facade grant. What happens is it's a reimbursement. So we talked about Dave Shriver is the last one to have gotten the facade grant. He's spent his own money, and we've encumbered the money that we're going to give him, but he hasn't come in with his receipts yet to be reimbursed. So yes, the facade grant we went from sort of a grant program to sort of, with the facade grant, they bring in the receipts and we reimburse them.
Okay, if everyone's ready, we can make a recommendation to the authority committee.
I'm happy to try unless someone else would like to. No? Okay. I would like to propose that, or recommend that we no longer fund the facade improvement program, as it is inconsistent with the Redevelopment Authority's objective of utilizing discretionary redevelopment funds for infrastructure projects that benefit the general public and provide support to existing property owners, businesses, and events, rather than providing incentives directly to individual property owners, business, and events.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So was that a unanimous vote?
Yes, item 5. Would you guys like to discuss anything?
For staff reports and updates related to RACC, we had this meeting. Right now, I don't have anything to bring forward to RACC, so I'm not certain when your next meeting will be. I also know the Board of Supervisors, or I should say City Manager's Office, is soliciting applications to complete this committee. So just so you're aware, if you feel like, wait, why is there only 5 and not 7 of us? But they are recruiting. So that is happening. And if there's anything you all would like to discuss, I'm happy to put on the agenda and set up a meeting.
I would like to have on the agenda, or actually it would need to go to the board, to appointment of a few more folks.
Right, and the city manager's office is doing that recruitment. It's an open recruitment. And I talked to a business owner today who I'm pretty sure will be applying, so we have interest.
Thank you. I have a report and a comment, if we're there yet.
Okay, yeah. Everybody ready to move on?
I would just like to give accolades to Hope Sullivan for really the incredible master plan outreach. And, you know, the redevelopment districts and our businesses are really so important to our community and the vision of Carson City and what makes Carson City wonderful. And this listening tour really was, you did a masterful job. You know, everybody felt heard. And I think there was some really good information gained from it, and to get the idea behind really the direction that our community would like to go in. So well done.
If I may, just related to that, something we kept hearing, what Supervisor Schutte just alluded to, is we're updating the master plan. And as part of that process, the Planning Commission and I are doing what we're calling the listening tour. So we're going around and asking questions. Something we're hearing a lot of that I think may land back at this committee is the concern about vacant buildings. So it's an interesting topic. It's a tough topic, and it may be something that we see. So I'll just give you that as like the preview of the movie. Okay.
And Hope, I would also like to thank you for coming and speaking with our realtors and listening to them. They felt heard, so that's great. All right, public comment?
I'd like to add my thank yous to everybody that has been part of that outreach master plan, and I'd also like to suggest that what I heard from the youth was they'd like to have a mall. And I had to think about what a mall would mean to a child or a youth or such, because I didn't have such when I was a kid. We did most of our communications and visiting while we were at school or at a recreational or athletic type events, and then whatever parties people put on, but I wasn't very much in touch with those. But it seems to me they just want a place to sort of hang out. And I think that the redevelopment encouragement for Kmart and several other places that are empty wouldn't quite fit the bill, because they're not a mall like they have in Reno. But there could be things encouraged like arcades and different things that aren't necessarily money spent. But, you know, we have a wonderful pavilion out in Mills Park that would provide people flying their drones or having races with their small electric cars or my thing like that. They just want a place to hang out where it's safe. They've got sort of adult supervision without direct contact necessarily. And so I'd love the redevelopment to get into the encouragement. I know we're not supposed to recruit, or not necessarily recruit companies in, but to encourage somebody to come in and face that with the kids. So I think that's great. And we have athletics and we have school programs going on, which I appreciate as well. But in the redevelopment situation, I've got to read that over responsibilities and duties myself. And so this how to get money out that we just don't know where it comes from in the first place. And that's part of my problem. So thank you very much for being here. I'm going to be getting back on this and learning better. Thank you.
Thank you, Denny. Okay. If everybody's ready, we can adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.